Welcome back to the Found Frequency Podcast, your space for that alignment, expansion, and of course, unstoppable energy. I am your host, Found, and I'm so excited to have you here today. I've been on a really big, let's say, learning journey of my own in my own life journey evolution recently. And it's kind of ironic because this lesson didn't come from, just another certification, which I definitely have fallen down that spiral before. It wasn't like a book that I've read a lot, or, a specific mentor. It actually came from being in the water. It actually came from being in a place that was completely foreign to me and adjusting and getting absolutely humbled by the sport of wing foiling. And somehow, this falling in the water and getting torn up by the wind, has brought me back to a lot of lessons that I guess I don't know if I was relearning them or just strengthening what I had learned. But I remember ages ago, and I've mentioned this before in an episode, one of my old Zentai Shiatsu mentors, teachers, she shared this story that I actually think the story originally came from, I think his name's Friedrich Nietzsche. I don't know how to say that properly, but it was the three metamorphoses of the spirit, right? And years ago, I kind of thought I understood it. And then I'm like looking back now, and I'm like, okay, here we go. Yeah, that is life, right? So I'm going to share that and kind of show you what's been happening in my life. So one of the main stages, let's say, of your learning and your spirit is the camel. Okay. The first stage being that, meaning like the camel, if you picture a camel, it's got two humps that holds water, right? The camel is always taking on weight. The camel stage is like where you're always saying yes, even to things that maybe you don't want to say yes to. It's the work hard stage. It's follow all the rules. You're very conditioned in this stage. I feel like it's like it accepts burden after burden because that's what it's been taught to do. Right. And I think it honestly describes so many of us. If you're listening to this podcast, most likely you're a high achiever or you relate to one of, me being the gold star employee, you relate in some way to this overdoing kind of mentality that I, was caught up in. And, women who genuinely love growth and evolution and learning, right? Like automatically, you kind of don't even realize you're doing it or realize you're in the stage, and I feel like me in my 20s and more so like late 20s, I would even say my earlier 30s, I was like the person who just wanted every certification. I kind of felt like when I was in yachting, I was almost in a prison time-wise where I didn't have the time to get certifications because all I had time to do was sleep. So as soon as this new freedom of time came into my life, I was like, let me learn everything, yoga teacher, meditation teacher, shiatsu, zentai, or not zentai. Oh yeah, zentai shiatsu, actually. Yeah, they're two different things, learning the nervous system and the meridians, and even like later on, learning more about business and personal development and universal laws and marketing and sales, psychology of people, human behavior. It fascinates me. I absolutely love it. I wanted to learn deeper principles there. And I don't regret that in any way, but I feel like also every teacher's come into my life when I've needed them or when it's meant to, and courses have expanded me. Absolutely. And I feel like the certifications almost gave me language that is easier to translate, like things that I had already learned myself, but it was almost like a confirmation for me because I didn't trust myself, to just share it from my own experience beforehand, which I think is really interesting. And I think learning is beautiful. But at the same time, I think at some point you've got to ask yourself like a really uncomfortable question, right? Like for me, it was like, am I learning because genuinely I want this thing? I want to develop this, where I am in my life, or am I learning because I feel like I still have not enough? You know what I mean? There's different energies behind it. Obviously, I have to bring energy into the conversation, but different thoughts behind it, different feelings of like worthiness behind it, right? It's like, am I learning, or am I hiding behind this next course, being the forever student, right? I do think being a student of life is important, but being a student of life and still like participating in life are different, right? Like I noticed this pattern, right, in myself. Like I said, one more certification. I was reading like crazy, booking mentors, signs from the universe. It's like this feeling of waiting to feel that readiness feeling that doesn't actually come, because readiness is a decision, right? And it's funny when you're waiting, it's like it's almost like the finish line keeps moving. It's like, oh yeah, you finished this one, let's say certification, you're ready to go, but it's like, well, nah, I don't feel strong enough in this part of that, so let me keep going, right? And it's like before you know it, you're incredibly informed, but not necessarily transformed, right? Like information is there, knowledge is gained, information is like safe almost. And I feel like living these things out, integrating them, this is where we get it, a little bit more into the vulnerability of it all, right? Okay, now if I bring in the second stage of this spiritual evolution, it's the lion, okay? And I think the lion represents a lot of things, courage. And I think people automatically think of a lion and think like it's confidence, but it's like, I think it's the part that finally trusts itself, like the stage of where you know how to say no, and you know how to say no from a place of deep trust, you know how to stop outsourcing your knowing. You know how to stop waiting for permission, right? You're done believing you need another qualification, another certification, in my case, before I could actually get out into the world and teach what I've learned, right? Or actually integrate it into my own life and see what I experience, right? I wouldn't even say the lion's fearless. I would say it's living, right? And that's where I feel like so much of my own life has really shifted over the last few months, because I even caught myself doing this in the business where I just wanted to keep learning things, to keep adding to my tool belt, to provide even more value to clients without necessarily integrating them, right? And I'm feeling like life is where you learn things. You've got to get out, and obviously the river, this Columbian Gorge, the hatch is what they call it, these locals, has taught me a lot. I've been wing foiling a lot more consistently. And if you don't understand the sport of wing foiling, it's like balancing on a floating board. They come in many different sizes and shapes, attached to an underwater mast that has like wings underneath that. Okay. And basically at the same time, you're holding like an inflatable wing, right? Using the wind. Sometimes there's waves in the water, sometimes there's not, but you use the wind to get up. Okay. And obviously it's a very humbling sport. Once you get it, but until you get it, it's very humbling. And in the beginning stages, I definitely convinced myself that this was not for me. This was not my sport. I was pretty anti-wind for a long time being a surfer. And surfing, I don't remember having this struggle to become a surfer. Like it felt pretty natural to me from the get-go. I grew up on the water, so I don't really recall the growing pains, let's say. I'm sure they were there, and maybe I was just a lot younger, but I think, the wing foiling has reopened that, right? The first few sessions for me drove me nuts because it was so mental. And when I think about surfing is like my escape. Surfing is to get out of my mind, right? Surfing's moving my body, but surfing's connection with divine. And surfing, I don't think about anything, right? I'm just like in my little blissful bubble. Where winging, because I didn't know it, I've never done it before, it was very mental, right? Like, where am I placing my feet? Where do my hands go on this fucking wing? What is the wind doing? Like, I've never had to pay attention to the wind. Surfers don't really surf in windy spots, Where's the foil? Like, what's it doing? Where should I place it on the board? Am I standing too far forward? Am I standing too far back? Should I turn my body, my hips, my shoulders, right? Do I do this weird pumpy thing I see people do in the water? Do I wait? Like, it's so mental in the beginning. It requires like real conscious thought. And it drove me a bit nuts. I didn't want to be in my head. And I kept making excuses. I kept making excuses in my head. I had this internal narrative going on that was pretty loud. And it was like, maybe I'm just not built for this. Maybe this just is out of alignment. Maybe this just isn't for me. Okay. Have you ever noticed that with yourself, that, actually starting anything new feels exactly like that? Whether you're starting your own business or posting a video or speaking on stage for the first time or leaving a relationship, dating again, healing, becoming a mother, whatever it might be, everything kind of feels like chaotic and a bit mental in the beginning, right? It feels a bit awkward. It feels unnatural. It feels uncomfortable. It feels like work. Okay. But it has nothing to do with you doing it wrong. It's a natural progression. It's simply because it's a new thing for you to learn, right? And what's incredible is when you keep going. So I kept going, right? Obviously a bit rusty, but there were definitely glimpses of my sessions on certain days where I was actually catching waves and I wasn't thinking about it. I was foiling, right? And there were other days where I'm like, what am I doing out here? Like, if I fell on top of the wing or the fin hit me, I actually fell on top of the foil the other day and they're sharp, but you keep showing up. And eventually, what happened, and I didn't even realize it was happening when it happened, was I stopped thinking about where my feet were, right? I stopped obsessing over my hand placement and I stopped analyzing every gust of wind and every part that I was doing to this. My body started to remember it. And it's like, what once required so much conscious effort became instinct, right? And I realized, honestly, this is how everything works, right? It's like, we can't think our way to embodiment, and this is a hot topic. And I feel like I want you to understand this, because it's one thing to hear this from other people, but when you finally it clicks for you, things just happen so much faster for you. The progression is incredible. So if you think about it, okay, it's like, I've never met anyone that became a surfer because they read 10 books on surfing, right? The ocean really doesn't care how much theory you can have every book memorized on surfing, on how to turn and how to paddle out and etiquette and where to place your feet and what board to ride according to the weight that you are, right? It's going to respond to you actually doing the thing, to you actually participating, to you actually paddling out, right? To falling, to paddling again, to getting swallowed up by water, to missing waves, to slipping on waves, to then catch one, right? To then miss 10 more. It's like, eventually your body understands something your mind doesn't need to, right? Your mind couldn't. I feel like for myself, my own personal experience in this entrepreneur game, business, exactly the same. Confidence, same thing. Leadership, exactly the same. Relationships are the same. Spirituality, your own soul's evolution, same thing. It's like, we can't meditate our way into being courageous, right? We can't journal our way into being the most confident, magnetic woman on this planet. You can't visualize your way into self-trust. You actually have to do things. You have to participate. You have, the practices matter. Yeah, they're beautiful, but life's going to ask you to actually be part of the game. You can't just sit over on the sidelines expecting all these things to shift when you're not actually shifting yourself, right? It's an energetic game. And if we bring it, full circle here, that's like, you hear this in a lot of personal development things, the be, do, have. When I was a part of that partnership business for years, that's all he said, be, do, have, be, do, have. I don't even know who originally said it, but yeah, be, do, have. And I think people misunderstand this, right? They hear be her now, right? And I think automatically they're like, okay, well, I've got to pretend, I've got to pretend that I'm already successful. I've got to pretend that I have this confidence where I'm shaking internally. I've got to pretend that I feel abundant. And that's not it. it's not pretending. We're not bypassing, we're being. That means we're internally shifting ourselves, right? We're showing up the way that future us would show up, but we show up at that as that person today. You still have uncomfortable conversations. You still fall, you still learn, you still get things wrong. You're less reactive because you're showing up from a higher frequency. You're showing up from a higher vibration. So the way you handle things is completely different. It doesn't mean you're not making mistakes. It doesn't mean you're a wrong person. You're trusting yourself enough to actually get in the game, and not just get in the game, but stay in the game, to understand that the struggle, the challenges, the part in the beginning where the water's choppy is part of that journey, right? But who you are in that part is so important. And I feel like, I'm going off on a tangent here, but I feel like this is where people miss the mark. They get into it and they have a brave decision and they do something courageous and they invest or they start their business. And then it's not like, rainbows and butterflies right away. And they're not used to that, or they're not prepared for that because they haven't stepped into this version of themselves who can handle that. They're still operating from an old identity when they're asking for, this new reality. And that's not how it works. You have to operate from this new identity to be able to handle what you're asking for. Okay, I'm just going off on a complete tangent there. You got to stay in the game, Pretending is like you've mastered the wave without ever fucking getting in the water. Being is actually paddling for it and maybe falling and paddling it for it again, knowing that there's always another wave coming, right? That's what the future version of you would do, and to wrap this up, the last bit of the three, not pillars, the three stages of this spiritual evolution is the child. So we had the camel and the lion, but the lion's not the destination. It's not the final stage. The final stage is the child. What is the child? Like, isn't that fascinating? It's like after all this learning that we put ourselves through, after all the courage and the healing and the becoming and, getting rid of limiting beliefs and deconditioning ourselves, you don't actually arrive as someone who is more serious, right? You arrive back at someone who is free, right? It's like a child says yes to things. Child creates things, a child plays. They're in this joyous frequency. They experiment with life. They don't take life so seriously. They know, they don't know exactly how something ends before beginning it. They just do because they're drawn to it. You're not obsessed with looking foolish, right? You're participating. And I think that's what I've noticed with my own journey. If we bring it back to wing foiling, right? When I first started, I was tense. I definitely was judging myself. I definitely was judging in my head. I definitely had a narrative automatically that this wasn't for me. I wasn't cut out for this. So I didn't want to be this person. And it made it 10 times harder, right? And then also assuming, because surfing was so natural to me, that this new thing would come so naturally, that I was, trying to get everything right. And it actually pissed me off. It was almost like, I don't want to say I felt guilty, but it almost, you know what it did? It like killed my ego, because my ego was like, I can do sports. I'm actually, pretty sporty person. And I'm not saying that to like, I don't know. I'm not saying that in the sense that I think I'm great at everything, but I definitely can hold my own when it comes to sports. And it's funny doing a sport that I've never done before, automatically thinking that. And then, my ego is bruised, right? Because I couldn't do it right away. And I was trying to do everything right. And I catch myself even now, I'm like laughing because I'm back in that joyous energy and I'm playing and I'm on the waves and I don't give a shit how I look, right? I'm not judging myself. I'm trying things and I'm falling. And when I fall, I think it's actually a lot of fun and I get back up. It's not because, I'm an expert at the sport by any means, but we'll get there. But I'm not trying to prove anything. I've stopped trying to control the experience that I'm having and I just am enjoying it. And that's, I bring this up quite a lot because I think if people could learn, if people could really like cement this in their brain, that they're not actually in control, you are not in control, you're in control to how you react to things. You're in control of, your thoughts, because your thoughts are not you, your thoughts are not facts. But if they could understand that that is like the biggest cosmic joke, we're not actually in control, we would just feel so free. We would let go. We would stop trying to like fucking suffocate things and be so attached to things, because we can't actually control anything. We cannot. We are part of a greater dance. We are co-creating. We are not separate from nature. We are not separate from this massive, infinite universe, right? So yeah, there's that. So I would say today, maybe the question isn't, let's bring it home. What else do I need to do or learn? Maybe it's like, what am I actually blocking myself from? What am I refusing to participate in? What am I making excuses for when actually life is just asking me to participate in it, right? Where have you become the camel, let's say, taking on another course or learning something more and not actually courageously sharing that with the world? Another certification excuse disguised as participation. I've definitely done this, definitely been guilty of it. And it's funny, when I was doing it at the time and hearing this story, I was like, holy shit, I'm that person. I'm in that stage right now. And, sometimes we can recognize where we are, we can recognize our patterns, but honestly, the only way to actually shift out of them is to pattern interrupt in the sense that I don't need another certification. I heard something the other day online, and it was like, everything you need to know. Everything you need to know. And I was like, fuck, okay, I know everything I need to know. It was a great reminder, because I still catch myself. I'm like, ooh, maybe I could go get this other thing. And, I love learning, don't get me wrong, but we need to have the discernment, and we need to recognize when we're using learning as an excuse or as a hiding place, when the world just needs you, right? The world just wants to see you and your most authentic, soulful self. Okay. I feel like the lion inside you is asking you to just trust yourself enough to begin, and the life that you're trying so desperately to create honestly isn't waiting for you to pick up another book, or a sign, or to have a perfect plan. There's no such thing, it just wants you in it, to be in your life, to participate. I feel like my own life has taught me that over and over and over again. And that's why this conversation comes up so often in my world. You're not going to be rewarded because you got every certificate under the sun if you're just sitting in a classroom all the time, never actually seeing the sunlight. You know what I mean? You've got to get in that water. You got to fall. You've got to laugh. You've got to put that joyous energy out into the world. You've got to adjust. You've got to keep paddling. You've got to trust your body and your heart and your soul, and learn things that your mind couldn't have. And maybe, just maybe, that is where the real freedom lies, my friends. Not knowing exactly where the wave of life, let's say, is going to take you, but trusting yourself enough to paddle out anyways. So I am going to love and leave you there. As always, if this episode struck a chord for you, if you had a little light bulb moment go off, subscribe, rate, do all the things. I don't even know what they're doing these days. Oh no, YouTube is subscribe, although I am on YouTube. And yeah, if you have any questions, want to go deeper into my world, you can always jump into my DMs. I promise I do not bite, at fallonmichaela.co on Instagram. And I will love and leave you there. Bye for now.